This is an ISRM London chapter event, but I'm very conscious we have a global audience this afternoon.
So I'm Andrew, co-founder of Serve.
My name is Mads. I'm based in Denmark. I'm the founder of a company called Human Risks.
My name is Elisa Schultman and I work for Keolis Amy Docklands on Docklands Light Railway, so I look after security and emergency planning.
Gasper.
Tremendous pleasure for being within the panel. Who's actually going to do it? Where's that specific knowledge?
We have a lot of issues with trespass and train surfing and antisocial behavior.
Open source intelligence available, varying on the country, of course, but UK is a really good example. It's a lot of good structured data.
It's knowing that the product that you put into place makes a genuine difference to the way that people in the risk management sector perform, and it proves things and makes society safer. That's ultimately why we're in this business.
This is an ISRM London chapter event, but I'm very conscious we have a global audience this afternoon. And AI and risk management is very much a global topic of interest. We have with us on the panel discussion today.
So I'm Andrew, co-founder of Serve.
My name is Mads. I'm based in Denmark. I'm the founder of a company called Human Risks.
My name is Elisa Schultman and I work for Keolis Amy Docklands on Docklands Light Railway, so I look after security and emergency planning.
Gasper, building on that, would you like to give us your background as well?
Yeah, hi, tremendous pleasure for being within the panel. So when we are scoping and looking for solutions out there, what's often missing is who's actually going to do it. Quite often within the industry, within the risk management, I'm the same. I'm not a subject matter expert, which means that when I'm scoping for a solution, we tend to miss out the key component of where's that specific knowledge, either within the organization that I represent and I'm a part of, or within the vendor side where I'm actually going to be able and enabled to hook myself and start leveraging the data, which can be scattered across literally 3 different areas. So me, business internal, in my vendor's cloud and my vendor's servers, and then what's within the open space and public domain.
And Elisa, just to allow you to build on that, because I know you're coming from that perspective embedded in-house in security and risk management. How has that conversation evolved in early 2024?
Yeah, so from our perspective, it's more understanding what the problem we're trying to resolve and whether that can be actually resolved by the AI. And pretty much is split into a few categories. One is we're trying to resolve something that we can't find a resolution or haven't found resolution so far. It could be anything in security, and especially in railway, we have a lot of issues with trespass and train surfing and antisocial behavior. And apart from the solution of putting a police officer at each and every station, it's not a solution. So how we can actually solve that problem and predict the issues that may occur. The other category would be saving time. A lot of data analysis and writing deployments takes awful a lot of time. A lot of incident reviews take a lot of time. As a good example, recent investigation I was completing, it took me 80 hours, which probably AI would have taken about 8 minutes, and then produced a report that you can then just scrutinize instead of trying to collect all data. And then really testing something that we actually don't know. So it's giving us the knowledge of what's happening, so seeing in the future. We use that for threat analysis via Serve. So we've created this a little dashboard that predicts us what's happening with potential protests and anything else, any disruptions that may occur on the railway, making us more prepared. So yeah, before you actually go there and try and find a seller, you actually need to understand what your problem is. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult for the seller as well. And you either will gonna come out across someone who's gonna say, we can do anything for you, which is never true, or someone who's going to say, you don't know what your problem is, so we can't really help you, so you're never going to get anywhere. But yeah, definitely the first bit is a problem solving, what problem we're solving, and the exec board will always look at that as well. So they want to see the actual results, what's going to bring us.
Andrew, on that, would you like to just unpack that and give us your view?
You can get data sets which are internal, you can get data sets which are external and open source, which is basically the publicly available internet. And then you have data sources which are called humans. How do we bring them together? Having organizations that have a very good, clear view of what the job to be done is really helpful. And then we would look to not use AI in the first place. And if we do use AI, then we need to be mindful to make sure that the customer is aware that there is a risk around that.
Mads, just to throw back to you if you'd like to build on that as well.
We have 3 projects. One is pattern recognition, spotting tendencies among vast amount of data. As you just mentioned, Andrew, you know, internal incident reports on the system. You can report your own incidents. What is available, excuse me, via vendors of intelligence systems. It could be Dataminr, it could be Factful, you know, all these providers. And then we can see, of course, there's a lot of open source intelligence available, varying on the country, of course, but UK is a really good example. It's a lot of good structured data. Pattern recognition is interesting. Content generation, and that was just before ChatGPT went bananas, but there's a lot of writing typically in creating a risk assessment or writing up an incident report or whatever. How can we speed that process up? And thirdly, we initially called it risk prediction, and we've actually changed that to risk analysis. It ends up in that all 3 elements of these projects overlap in the product that they would like to have. You know, could you automatically generate me a risk assessment that uses pattern recognition and writes this up?
There's a lot of concern around being at the fore often of these kind of innovations. There's an appetite to drive some of the opportunities in terms of more advanced analysis, but there is in a way a concern often around first mover disadvantage. Just your thoughts in terms of working with clients on those who've approached it from that innovation perspective, and how that has kind of either led to a success or led to redefining what they're looking for.
Thanks, Doug. So it does depend on the maturity of the organization's risk management function. Okay. So you can have some of the most advanced companies in the world producing stellar products, but their risk management function might, and a lot still do, use paper and pen. Therefore, when you have a conversation with them, they are just looking to digitize, let alone do anything around AI. They are possibly years away from that. Whereas you come to someone like Elisa, and in the transport regulated reporting environment, then you get a client who really is looking to push the boundary of things. And then one needs to agree with the client that there is an element of risk to that. And I tend to use the technology readiness levels, which some people will be aware of, which is what NASA came out with back in the 60s. So you frame the conversation around, okay, we're going to look at this project, and we're going to have a look at, for example, workforce deployment. This is going to take this much time to do, and we can probably establish a feasibility study over the next 3 months. It's going to cost, say, 50,000 euros, and the potential clawback is 2 million euros, for example.
One of the challenges around AI integration is the evolving regulatory environment, but also probably naturally in an innovative space, the lack of a really well-defined environment around what goods looks like.
It's also interesting with things like Martin's Law in the world of security. Here in the UK, the draft legislation and the possibility of the idea of data sharing information. So that idea that one organization has in the vicinity another organization, how does one then share that information? Well, we could always anonymize most of the identifiable information. And then if it's something that's of interest, you would connect both parties independently. So it just depends on the profile or security posture of the organization, how involved their information security department is, and we work accordingly.
Everybody now is like taking a step back and say, oh my God, what are the consequences, and what could potentially be the risk here of, I'm in the EU with GDPR and everything. So there's a huge legal framework there, but also ethically, it's a huge challenge, right? But what can we do, and what are we doing, and what do we do with the data, and what can come out of it? I don't have the answer for that, to be honest.
There are kind of 3 levels of data sharing risks that we would take. So there's certain data and certain incidents and reports that we will never share outside. There are internal, because they would give out to people our risks and vulnerabilities to exploit those. So obviously there's some information that will never be shared, plus all of your general privacy data as well. Then there is information that we would share with selected partners. So majority of our security information would be shared to British Transport Police and vice versa. We have some other partners, such as Excel Exhibition Centre or London Stadium, etc. They are so close to us that we actually benefit from each other's sharing of information. So we'll share to an extent some information with them, but only as selected partners, so you will have the agreements. And then there's stuff that we actually would want to share out so that people have it available. Most of it would be the timetables, any disruptions and so on. So we would share that information. But there's also things like from the emergency preparedness perspective, and especially around weather and around floods, fires, etc. You actually want to share that information out publicly, so people have access to it as well. So yeah, there's kind of 3 levels, and when we would be looking at the software development and AI, we would be looking at most of the data sitting, and the actual information is all sitting within our organization, and then we choose how that data is shared, which is shared and which isn't shared.
And very mature organizations, Andrew said it himself, very, very mature organizations, household names, on the business side, the money-making side, through the roof. Wow. When it comes to the risk side, the night and day scenario.
That business case development point and defining that value proposition, how have you seen that evolve, and how have you been tackling that?
Yeah, I think the business case is the key to unlock the actual testing and trialing of any new technology. So from my perspective, it's similar to what I would approach the sellers with, is the problem we're trying to solve. So you need to explain and describe the problem within a business case of what we're trying to solve, and how we're going to achieve it. And it's always good to have several options of how this can be achieved, just in a comparison. Sometimes most of the times, of course, it's price, but sometimes it's not so much a price, but actual complexity of a solution, or the actual results from the solution that will differ. But it's always good to have several options for the exec to actually compare, to understand what the problem is, what our options are, and if we're going to go with X, Y, or Z, what's going to be the result. And the next stage, once you get the approval of a concept of, okay, yeah, I agree, we need to solve this problem, I agree we need to use one of these options, is then finding the supplier that can understand what your problem is, can translate it into the digital world, technology and technical speech, can actually translate it into what or how their solution is going to work, and then provide kind of an executive summary. This is how the solution is going to work. This is how much it is going to be. The key with supplier selection for me has always been that the both sides are willing to take risks. So if we're going somewhere new, that the buyer and the seller are both prepared to take risks. That the risk being is that we normally, how I normally approach it is we select a smaller portion of the solution. Let's say we don't want to solve the world, let's solve this one specific problem. Then we create a smaller trial of a software and see how it works. tweak it a little bit, but then the risk there for the seller is that we might not actually go with it. We might just pay for the development. It hasn't worked. We don't go anywhere further with that. Or if it has worked, we'll develop it further, or we keep whatever the solution is. So that's how we'd all normally I would go about building it, and then presenting it as a business case to the exec. It is also always easier to get something started when it's not that expensive. There's a certain budget that okay, and this is another reason why I always go with a smaller solutions of one singular problem than solving everything, is because it's more manageable cost wise. And then the risk of the losing that money is like, well, it was still worth it because we can say that we've trialed something even if it hasn't worked. So we're being innovative, where if it's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds worth of software, it would be a bit silly to be innovative and not use that if it's at that price. So yeah, that's kind of how the business case normally develops. And once you get a green light, it's really key just to keep the business updated on how it's going, have regular reports, regular updates, and then yeah, if it's successful, we will use it. If it's not, then a good explanation and a good kind of a exit sit down with a supplier to explain we wanted that. It hasn't worked. These are the reasons why it hasn't worked. It could have been because the technology is not there yet, or it could have been that we thought this is going to resolve it, but it hasn't resolved it. So yeah, that's from my perspective.
Andrew, what does success look like?
So success for us, I think, was probably crystallized just with about, I think, 23rd of December. We got an email from a client saying 12 months ago I was in this place. It wasn't the dark place, but it was a place. And you came along and you did all these things with our data, and it's totally changed the way that we do everything. And this is a sizable organization. And that was enough. So even though we could talk about things like we would love a hockey stick growth and we would love loads of money because we're supposed to be, vendors just looking for growth. But in actual fact, it's knowing that the product that you put into place makes a genuine difference to the way that people in the risk management sector perform, and it proves things and makes society safer. That's ultimately why we're in this business. So that's what success looks like for us.